So hello, welcome back to the channel, welcome to almost certainly one of the last videos of 2020. And today I'm going to share with you some news I've been dying to share with you for some months. As the title of the video would suggest, we're going racing again in a big way in 2021. We have signed with Praga to race in the Britcar Endurance Racing Series in their R1T. It's a phenomenal high downforce, slicks and wings, proper thoroughbred racing car. But at this stage, I just want to acknowledge and say a massive thank you to the guys, the commercial team that run JWW behind the scenes. I don't often talk about them. It's not just me. There's a lot of planning, a huge amount of logistics and commercial acumen that goes into making this channel work. And if it wasn't for my partner Darren, the guys who are involved in our team to make these things happen, well, it quite simply wouldn't have done. And I know that 2020 for all of us has been a particularly challenging year. I'm not afraid to say that if it wasn't without that team, that my year simply wouldn't have looked as positive as it ultimately ended up being. So thanks to those guys. Hopefully they are watching, and I want to do them proud and go proper full bore racing in 2021 in a very special car. So we're on our way now to the bunker. I've always had this dream, as I'm sure most petrol heads, growing up, to go racing. Big thank you as well and acknowledgement to Caterham at this stage for giving me my first leg on the ladder in the world of racing, but it's also their fault for giving me the racing bug, and oh my god did it bite hard. I mean, it's also injected me on its bite with some very addictive venom, and now I just cannot get the idea of racing out of my brain. But thankfully we've been able to orchestrate a great plan moving forward next year with Praga, and I'm now going to introduce you to the car, which will be ultimately joining our garage, even though it's a track only racing car, for next season. So let's check it out. So hello, welcome to the bunker, and importantly, welcome to the Praga R1T, which I will be racing in Britcar for Praga next year. What's significant about this car, after getting my taste for racing in Caterham this year, I'm now sort of branching out to experience other different forms of motorsport. And Praga very kindly invited me down to Donington to test drive this car. So we'll be in and out of Donington and the bunker while we share with you specs on the car and experiences in the pits as we go about our test day. So let's hop to Donington, and then we'll bring you back here and introduce you to some of the in-depth features of this remarkable vehicle. Welcome to sunny Donington Race Circuit. There's exciting days, and then there is today. Behold, a proper high downforce racing car. I'm here to test the Praga. Now this thing is thoroughbred stuff. It's currently racing in Britcar. The team actually won Britcar this year, so it's a proper piece of kit. Just as a quick overview, we'll run you around the car in more detail shortly, but it's running a Renault Sport 2-litre turbocharged engine. The car weighs just over 600 kilograms. It's around about 620 kilograms. There's three different engine maps, 330 horsepower, 360 horsepower, and 380 horsepower, and it is capable of generating up to 1,000 kilograms of downforce, which means in theory, similar to an F1 car, it could drive upside down, generating more downforce than the car actually weighs, which means this thing running on slicks is a proper slicks and wings racing car. Now this season I've had the grace and fortune of having one of the most fantastic driving experiences in the Caterham Academy, but in terms of driving technique and styles, they couldn't be any further apart. So today we're here to test it, find out what it's about. Sir Chris Hoyt, how's things, dude? All right?
Pretty good. Thank you. Yeah, good to see you.
Great stuff. How do you think it will compare to things you've driven? Because on the outside it looks like a baby LMP car.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what it's going to be like. I think, you know, having driven Radicals, Revolution, LMP cars, I think it'll be somewhere in between, really. It's very short wheelbase, so it's going to be pretty nimble. It's a turbo, so it's quite peaky. Just trying to feather that right foot. But you know, I guess part of the fun of trying new cars and new championships, it's just different things, and you adapt and you learn. So, but for you, it's going to be, it'll open up a whole new world for you.
Yeah. So we've got no traction control, no ABS, loads of downforce, and what looks to be a fairly short wheelbase. So I think it's the case of you either find that window of downforce or not. I'm going to be really interested to see if it's quite snappy when it lets go, or if it's quite a progressive sort of slip. I've been used to Caterhams where when it lets go, it's sort of part of the experience. It's all very quite a lot of optimal. In this, I get the feeling when it lets go, it might be past the point of that.
I think you'll be surprised if it's anything like a Radical. You'll be surprised at how much opposite lock you'll be giving it. On the exit, hopefully not on the entry. But initially, it'll just be about being smooth and about really just being disciplined with your right foot, with powering in gently. So I think it demands respect. I think is what you would say.
So fundamental aspect of this car: low weight, high downforce, and pretty decent power. In a way, if you're familiar with LMP cars, Le Mans prototype cars, it's taking that fundamental formula and making it a sort of baby LMP car. And it's fast. I mean, today at Donington, it is greasy, cold and wet, and we aren't really managing to get the proper heat into these slicks that we would like. And even still, this thing is one of the fastest cars out there. The mystical, dare I say it, dark art of downforce is a fantastic thing to experience, but if you haven't had much experience in full downforce cars, it does take a little bit of working up to. Anyway, onto the car. Let's just talk about the styling. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know this term gets thrown around a lot. If Batman had a racing car, it would be X, but really, look at this, in all black exposed carbon. That's the other thing. One massive component of making this car so light is the fact that everything is carbon fiber. The other thing, which is a massive deal, of course, in racing, is safety. Now, not only are the external panels carbon, but you're in a carbon cell, which is crash tested to the latest FIA standards. So this thing goes really quickly, and the last thing you want is to be in a car which can be damaged easily. And Praga have put in a lot of R&D into making the sort of driver cell, the driver zone, super safe. Speaking of driver zone, join me. We'll talk about the external shortly. The driver zone, it's absolutely tiny. The reason I want to share with you this section here, this is the aperture at which the driver has to enter and exit the car. Now, Praga is in the Britcar series, which for all intents and purposes is shorter endurance racing. Britcar races are typically an hour. There are some longer races within the season, but importantly, you share the drive with a teammate, which means halfway through a race, or depending on what your particular team's race strategy is, you have to work with your teammates to get you and them in and out of the car, fastened in, ready to go as efficiently as possible. But it's very exciting. One thing I've learnt in my short experience in racing so far is that I really like the idea of the teamwork aspect. Now, these are fully team supported. There's a wonderful company who is running the Donington Day called VR Motorsport, and they run the Praga series in Britcar. The guys are fantastic, and because they've got some great experience with these cars, not only do you learn lots, but you're in the hands of someone who knows these cars inside out, and they get them set up really well. To the interior, check out the seat. Now, one thing, the chances are when you swap drivers with whoever else will be driving or racing this car with you, they won't be exactly the same shape and size as you. So we need to have a insert made to go inside this seat for myself or whoever the other person is to go in this car, because you've got to become a component of it. So everything needs to wrap around you as you exit the car and enter the next driver. Either a bespoke seat needs to come in or out in order to fit the next driver. But I like that part of it. It's very much part of the actual teamwork itself. And then you've got this section here. So this is the wraparound section, which will ultimately support your helmet. Now these, as I mentioned, can generate up to 3G, which is 3 times your body weight. And when that's going through your neck after a half-an-hour stint of 10-tenths racing, it's nice to have something that your head can rely on just in case you get a little bit fatigued. And then, check this out, steering wheel. This is proper formula stuff. Of course, like any self-respecting racing car, it does come off the steering column, like so. The gearbox in this is actually a Hewland sequential box, and that's a pretty reliable and familiar platform in racing. And the way this thing shifts gear is so fast. Now, just quickly, I've seen something interesting in here which has reminded me of the history of Praga. So one thing I found when I'm mentioning this brand to people that I might be racing up at Praga, they've been like, who? Who are these guys? Remarkably, Praga are a 100-year-old brand. Make everything, or have made everything, from buses to aeroplanes, go-karts, and now racing cars. Interestingly, their go-kart program has seen more world champions graduate from their go-karts into various series than anyone else. But when I saw this up here, it reminded me that these guys made aeroplanes, because up here is quite aviation cockpit inspired, and this is where your start-stop button is, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let's talk about the engine, because this is the business end of the car. While there is a lot of downforce from the car, which looks like it happens on the top of the car, a lot of it happens as a result of ground effect with this massive flat bottom floor and this distinctly huge rear diffuser. So check it out. Air exiting here, nice clean airflow. It comes from the flattest of flat bottom floors. It also rides incredibly low. When we refer to race car low, that's where this comes from on downforce cars. They only really operate if the ground effect works by having the floor pan of the car as close to the tarmac as is possible to achieve. Now, while we are around the back, we can notice exhaust, gearbox, and some of the engine components. So the engine is a 2-litre Formula Renault engine. As I mentioned on its highest powered map, it can currently develop 380 horsepower, run through a sequential Hewland gearbox. And in this era of Praga, previous generations were naturally aspirated cars, but for next season, as I mentioned, this is the R1T, T for turbo, generally allowing for more torque, more power. Previously, in a straight line, these cars weren't the fastest. Again, with a massive amount of downforce comes a massive amount of drag. So upgrading to a turbo has allowed for a lot more torque to help it punch through the air. I'll be racing against the likes of Porsche GT3 Cup cars, 488 Challenge cars, etc. So this thing needs to be able to keep up with them in the straights. As a series, it's really growing. I think Praga will have over 10, I think 10 or 11 cars on the grid next year. So there'll be some close racing amongst the Praga cars as it is. But what is great is that we'll also be battling along some great names like Ferrari, Porsche, BMW, etc. So let's see how it goes. As always, thanks for watching. See you soon. Ciao.